Okay, guys, welcome back. After a great clinic there, we jump back into our time machine as we head back to our sunburnt country. We're joined here by a guy that was once a Welshman, now an Australian. He's the AP Chair of Australia. He's been all over the country filming layouts for years in preparation for this pandemic. So sit back with your morning coffee or your nightly cold beer and enjoy another set of layout tours from Gerry.
Okay, so we'll hit the video now.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Broxburn Sidings. It's the terminal for a branch line in Queensland. The layout is running HON 42. In other words, it's a 3'6" gauge. And the layout runs on DC. It's been to a number of exhibitions and conventions around the state and is very popular. At one end there is a strange looking gadget. It's actually a storage turntable with 3 tracks. The train runs from the turntable onto the layout and switches, shunts the cars to their required spots. You may notice a different type of coupler on the end of the cars and the locos. This is called the Jackson coupler, and it comes from the UK. Very handy on this type of layout. A small electronic magnet beneath the track is used to uncouple the cars. Operation of the turnouts is at the back of the layout on plungers. You will see posts with yellow markers on top. This just marks where the little magnets are located. They're about the size of a cigarette. So nice small diameter hole, which is a little ballast over the top and you won't know it's there. We also have steam on the layout. Everything seems to run very smoothly and very reliably. It does the switching. I didn't inquire as to what they were using to get the switching in the right areas, but as you can see, they're having fun. The storage turntable is at the back of the building where the loco is going in, and to get to the turntable he goes down the side of the building, out of sight. Most of the state of Queensland runs on 3'6" gauge track, main line, sidings, branch lines, heavy duty ore trains, even high speed tilt trains, which are very smooth once you're in them, all on 3'6". The logo is stopped alongside the white post with the yellow marker, which indicates the uncoupler magnet. And off it goes to get the next car. The diesel is finished switching for the day, and we'll connect up to the other end of the train, back out onto the main line and take it off into staging. Welcome to the Great Northern of Bob Best MMR. This HO layout replaces the old N-scale layout, also Great Northern, also running DCC from CVP. The layout is still under construction. Most of the buildings are scratch built and have yet to be mounted in place on the layout. It's still fun to operate. rather than put a train on and run it round and round and round and round. Construction on the layout has now stopped, as Bob will be moving from his current location in the Blue Mountains down into onto the lowlands to the west of Sydney. A lot of this is because of the available bushfires coming through the area, and it'd be safer down on the flatlands rather than up in the mountains. Fires have come to the back fence a couple of times. All the logs have been cleared from the log buggies, dropped into the log pond. The loco is now getting coupled up, ready to haul the empties back up the hill to where the trees are being cut and loaded.
Real broken.
The loco is turned and is ready to run back around its train for the climb up to the logging area, where it will exchange the cars for loaded cars. The loco has to be at the back for safety reasons, and as you can see, it's a fairly steep climb up there to the staging yard. The loco will now bring the loaded cars out onto the departure track and put the empty trains on the back track, which is the arrival track, and then get ready to go back down the hill. A climax will come down from the logging camp, take the empties up to the logging area to put some more logs on. And the mallet is connecting to the loaded cars and will take them down the hill. Welcome to the Mandalong Sub. Just as the Amtrak Superliner is coming down the hill behind the paper mill. This is the N-scale layout of Trevor James. It's DCC running with CVP. Running past the grain elevators, and plenty of cars waiting to be switched by a later train. The train is switching the area near the stockyards. A few other industries there, plenty of cows there today. The system is drop a car off, pick up a light car. It's very difficult for the majority of people to see the numbers on the N-scale cars. So if you've got 3 box cars and a reefer, you drop them off and you pick up an equal number. A pair of PAs pulling the Southern Pacific passenger train up the hill. It just passed a bunch of rail fans waiting on the hill for such an opportunity. What you see here is just 1/4 of the layout. The rest is being scenic and having some tracks changed, and will be in the next video of this particular layout. There's always things to do on a layout. A pair of Fairbanksmore switches are now switching around the small town with the grain elevators and plenty of other small industries to keep it busy for a while. Heavy freight is approaching the back of the paper mill. Triple header consists on the front. The bonus for today is the Union Pacific passenger train coming down the hill at the back of the paper mill. A group of photographers halfway down the hill will be very happy. Passenger trains followed by a freight. Some beautiful paint schemes on some locos these days. magnificent layout, Peter Sutton, Rio Grande Southern, HON3, and the Digitrax. Beautiful modelling, blends in with the scenery very, very well. This is only one section of the layout, the rest is still under construction. Videotape this layout, I've used up my gaffer tape for the day. So I've got a bit of music to cover background noise, but not to cover the locals. Now we are down to Adelaide in South Australia. Like many of the good layouts in South Australia, this one is run on DC. The structures are different to the rest of Australia. You see by the corners of the brick buildings they have a different identity. So you always find out where you are by looking at the brickworks when you're in Australia. The yellow loco is the 800 class, same as a New South Wales 48 class. And for those who really want to know, it's an Alco 251 inline 6. These locos are the 900 class. They are identical to the New South Wales 44 class. And for those who are really interested, they're powered by Alco 251 V12s. Some of these were broad gauge and some were standard gauge. South Australia is unique in having 3 gauges. The main line from one end of the state to the other is standard gauge, and now the new line up to Adelaide is standard gauge, but used to be 3'6". A number of the smaller lines around Adelaide are 3'6", and stuff coming in from Victoria runs broad gauge. Very interested to see some of the track combinations around the place. Welcome to Steve Chapman's ON30 layout. It's a small town going off of a branch line. There's plenty of people milling around and making plenty of noise. There were people outside the train room who were doing the same sort of thing, so I left the background noise on, put a little bit of light music on for you. The layout is in a single car garage, so there's not a great deal of space between the sections, especially when a few people try to car shoot, so I could not use a tripod for this lot. Excuse the shaking from the end of, Yeah, you're okay. This beautiful British prototype layout has been to a number of exhibitions across the southern states. That's South Australia, Victoria and Tasmania. It runs perfectly, and there are a number of unusual situations like the helper engine on the train going through now. Those veggies look very, very inviting. especially this weather. LMS unusual version of the Garrett. Plenty of trains running, and I love the private owner wagons with all the different names down the side. What I grew up with. The layout is housed in Adelaide, and there are a lot of top quality British layouts in Adelaide, and none of them run DCC. Interesting. Here comes a very interesting Garrett. LMS were the only ones that I know of that ran the Garretts in the UK.
Okay, so we're back. That was another excellent video from Gerry. You must have hundreds and hundreds of videos of layouts around the country. So I think there was a few questions there in the chat. Did you catch those, Brad?
Yeah. So the first one is, do you want to just touch lightly on some of the equipment you use? There's a few comments there on the lighting and that, and if you can just touch on the camera equipment.
Well, the lighting is whatever's supplied with the layout. I have no control over that. Most of them have pretty good lighting. Camera equipment for videos is a Canon HM300, which is now about 8 years old, but it's still working perfectly. So, yeah, it's just good equipment. I can't use anything but a Canon, seeing as I worked for them for almost 20 years.
Yeah, it's definitely a great way to keep track of your progress on the layout and share with others. So,
well, with conventions and exhibitions around the country, we treat it as a holiday and take a few days extra, and we can see all the extra layouts.
More Trains asked, the roundhouse stalls in one of the layouts were numbered out of sync. So it was 1, 3, 4. Is that a common practice?
Not that I know of. I've never noticed. I'll have to go back and have a look.
You got any questions over there in the YouTube chat, Martin?
Well, we had a couple there. There was Big Joe 6401 asked, why are there so many different track gauges in Australia? Are the track gauges set by each state, or is it countrywide? Well, we'll touch on that. Gerry will touch on that, but well, that's a subject that we've actually got one of our Australians putting a little clinic together on. So stay tuned for that one. It'll be coming up in the next 2 or 3 NMRAx's. But yeah, it is a hodgepodge of gauges over here, isn't there, Gerry?
Yeah, well, up until about 60 years ago, the states were competitive. So they didn't want people to cross over the border with their rails. So each one picked a different gauge. Queensland up north, Western Australia in west, Tasmania, they all went for 3'6". The smallest state, which is about the size of the UK, went for broad gauge. They followed the Irish, so they had an Irish engineer. And New South Wales, our little, our state, we went standard gauge. But now, in the past 20, 25 years, the main line from each state city to each state is standard gauge. But having said that, the best running trains or the fastest trains are up in Queensland, something like the Spirit of Queensland, which is the most comfortable and the fastest trains, and they're narrow gauge.
Well, as most people know that know me, I model Victorian Railways, so I've been told that I model the morbidly obese gauge. So now, what else did we have here? More Trains made a comment about seeing triple-headed signals and signal bridges on the little narrow gauge.
Yes, he also made a comment on the emphasis of running versus switching in some of those layouts.
Well, of the layouts there tonight, the switching, Great Northern does switching. The N-scale layout was switching, as you saw on there. The others were only running because I was there with a video camera and they just running trains round and round. And that normally puts me to sleep. But the last layout, the British layout, is an exhibition layout which travels around a few of the southern states. And the guy can get half a dozen trains running and it's DC. How he can do that, I don't know. That's real multitasking. And the others, the narrow gauge layouts, they do switching, all of them, because we had 1, 2, 3, 4 narrow gauge layouts. They all do switching, but you don't see much of that on the video. because when you're visiting on a layout tour or just visiting, they just tend to run trains round and round rather than do switching.
Yep. So I don't have any more comments or anything here in the YouTube chat. There's David Wolf arrived from Maryland. More Trains also said it was neat seeing the locos like the Alco cab units with the whole hostler windows and the rear end. So I think he must be talking about the New South Wales 44 classes.
Yeah, the one he would have seen tonight was the on the South Australian Railway. They have a 900 class, which is the same thing.
Okay, well, another great video. I think you entertained the masses overseas with the different modelling and layouts that we've got in Australia. So thanks again for that, Gerry. And I understand you got a couple of gems coming up in the future.
Yes, and the next one is what, 2 weeks?
I believe so.
NMRA, but I'll put a plug in, as my predecessor did. On the 6th of June is supposed to be our regional convention, which again is cancelled, in Sydney. It was to be held in Sydney. And there were a number of layouts on the north and the south of Sydney, which were going to be open for layout tours and operating sessions on some of them. So I'll be putting 2 videos up next Saturday. One northern, but north of the massive river, as we call it, and one southern. A lot of good layouts there, and I'll put the location up on the Friday so people from anywhere else can go and see some more layouts. Quite a few of those will be different to the ones you've seen so far.
Excellent. Look forward to it. Thanks a million, Gerry.
That's okay. See you again, guys.
See you soon. And